Okay, check this out. This is interactive 3D Earth visualization with orbiting satellites. I built this entire thing in React in about 20 minutes. And yeah, it's fully interactive, so you can drag to explore and see the details. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna talk about 3D elements in your web applications. 3D stuff on the web has always fascinated me. You know, when you are browsing and suddenly hit to one of these polished websites with incredible floating products, interactive visualizations, and you think, wow, how did they build that? Well, I always wondered the same thing, like I'm comfortable with React, I can build apps, but 3D, WebGL, 3GS, that always felt like a mysterious, very advanced territory which was way over my head. I got tired of just wondering. I decided, okay, let's dive in, let's figure that out. So I spent some time exploring React 3 Fiber, which, by the way, this amazing library that allows you to create 3D scenes using the regular React components. And honestly, it clicked almost immediately. So what is that React 3 Fiber library? Let's go to the website of this library, and here in introduction section you can see it is mentioned. React 3 Fiber is a React renderer for 3GS. Probably the next question you will get, what is 3GS? So 3GS is a JavaScript library which helps us to use WebGL under the hood, and WebGL utilizes GPU to render graphics in our browser. So React 3 Fiber is kind of wrapper for that 3GS, so it will help us to build this 3D graphics using React components. Now let's go to the documentation how to create our first scene. So here is the exact section, your first scene. So here first what we need to take a look is setting up the canvas. And here it is mentioned that canvas component does some important setup work behind the scenes. It sets up a scene and camera, the basic building blocks necessary for rendering, and it renders our scene every frame. You don't need a traditional render loop. And then inside that canvas we need to add that mesh component. And here it is mentioned that a mesh is a basic scene object in 3GS, and it's used to hold the geometry and the material needed to represent a shape in 3D space. We will create a new mesh using a box geometry. So here is the example. We have canvas, inside we have mesh, and inside that mesh we have box geometry to create a box. And also here it is used mesh standard material. And another interesting part is constructor arguments. So this is the way we define the shape of this box. So here in this box geometry we pass prop arguments, and here we pass three values, which means height, width, and depth. And here is another interesting topic, is adding lights to our object. So for that we can add ambient light component, and here we can set intensity as a prop, and here down below we have the result of that setup. So you can see that the red box is rendered. So we can play around with these values and see what will happen. So let's change this, let's change this, let's change this one as well. We can change intensity of the light, so let's set 9 for example. Also directional light we can change a bit just to see what will happen in this case. So you see that it is changing. So basically you can click that open sandbox and play around with that. But let's go to examples and see what exactly we can achieve with this library, and there are a lot of amazing stuff. In examples, let's click to that first one. So that one is a pretty cool example. So here we can see the kitchen, and actually when we hover on the objects here, so it will show us the price. Let's, for example, hover on table, and we see that it shows us a price for the table, which is 1,699. When we hover on the chairs, it does the same. Also, we can hover on the carpet or on the light. That's really incredible. Here, let's take a look at the app.js file. The setup here is pretty complex as for beginners, but you can see what an amazing stuff you can build with this library. Let's have a look to some other examples. And let's take a look at that one with the shoe. Okay, here is the shoe rendered in our browser, so we can see that it is rotating and it has some shadow as well. When we hover on it, we have some advertisement info and price. That's so nice. Now let's take a look at the code, and I want to point your attention at this part, at this hook use GLTF. So basically, what does that mean? This shoe, it wasn't drawn using this library. It was just imported as 3D model. And it was done exactly in this part. So here you see the file was passed with a GLB extension. So, and this file actually includes that 3D model of that shoe. And then we use this nodes and material to be able to draw it in our app. So if, for example, you have 3D models of your products or objects you want to render in your website, so React Fiber can help you to make it look that much nice. I found another cool example. Let's take a look at that MacBook and let's click on it. That looks awesome, isn't it? And also take a look that this Mac was imported as a 3D model from this file, Mac Draco GLB. Using the same hook, use GLTF. Okay, now let's go to my demo app where I built that Earth with the stars and satellites, and I will guide you through and show you how I build it. Okay, first the structure of the app, and it's pretty simple. We will have 4 components: Earth, lights, satellites, and stars. Now let's take a look at the dependencies. So we will need to install a React 3 Fiber, we will need to install 3 as well, and additionally we will need React 3 Dray. Dray will help us to use abstractions such as stars. Let's take a look at app component first. So here we have canvas, which is the main element as we read in React 3 Fiber documentation. And inside first we have lights, and then we use suspense. And while it is loading, we will have that HTML fallback. And once it is loaded, we will render stars, Earth, and satellites. And this HTML component, as well as orbit controls, we imported from that Dray library. That props for canvas I referenced from documentation. So here we set up camera and shadows, and also we set that DPR prop, which will help to respect high DPI screens. Now the main part, Earth model. So basically here I had 2 options. The first one is to import 3D model of Earth and use GLTF hook to render the Earth. In this case it will look like real Earth, but I decided to take a more interesting path. So I asked ChatGPT to draw Earth. So, and basically what he did, he drew Earth, continents, ocean, clouds, using just canvas. And the whole component became around 200 lines of code, 250. Here you can see that it drawn ocean gradients, then it drawn continents, clouds, ocean. So there are a lot of code for that. But let's take a look at the most interesting part for us. It's going to be markup, where we use the 3 Fiber component. And here by the ref, you can identify that this is Earth. For Earth, we use sphere geometry, of course, and we have that mesh foam material that's used for lightening and shininess. The next part is atmosphere of the Earth, and here we also use sphere geometry, and in that part we use mesh basic material. And this mesh basic material will provide us that fog effect. So all this is outer layer of the Earth. Let's take a look now at stars component, and here we use 2 elements, points and points material. Now we pass star geometry as a prop to points, and here we do some calculations to have the stars placed randomly in the space. From 3 library we import here points, a buffer geometry and float32 buffer attribute, and we use this in star geometry. For example, here we use new buffer geometry, and here we use new float32 buffer attribute. So that will help us to calculate properly the position of stars and size of stars. Here is satellites component. This part we have predefined satellites with their attributes. Then we use frame from React 3 Fiber to calculate the position of the satellites, and in this case to rotate them properly. And here let's take a look at the markup of that component. So here we use group and we use mesh as well. Inside that mesh we use box geometry and mesh standard material, the one we already see. So in box geometry we pass the height, width and depth of this satellites, and basically that's it. Also here in the bottom you can see text which we place to each satellite. And now let's go back to the final component, which is lights. Pretty simple. So here we use a directional light, ambient light, the one we already see in documentation of the library, and also 2 elements of point light. And also I want to remind you that I use ChatGPT to help me to build that Earth 3D animation. And ChatGPT helped me to set up that camera and light position, and it was actually very helpful. And basically that's it for the setup. You already saw the result in the beginning of the video, but now let's go back to the browser and take a look at it one more time. So as you see, we have space, we have stars, satellites, Earth, and also we have controls, so we can zoom in, zoom out, we can rotate it, and that's with help of Dray library. Now interesting point, so let's take a look at the continent. So you see that continents are totally incorrect, so probably this is a Greenland. Okay, nice. So unfortunately ChatGPT was not so successful to draw properly the continent, so it's better to import the 3D model of Earth for that purpose. And also satellites and stars looks pretty weird because they're totally squared and stars are squared, so you can achieve it with better results if you import 3D models, for example, of satellites, and stars can be improved, so you can try on your own and make it much better. Okay, that's a wrap up on this React Fiber demo. I know it might feel a bit overwhelming at first, and to learn React Fiber takes time. But once you master it, trust me, you unlock the ability to build truly amazing 3D experiences right in the browser. And the good news, these days you don't need to do it alone. I actually built this whole example using ChatGPT to brainstorm and iterate fast. Speaking of which, I've got pretty interesting idea brewing. In one of my next video, I will challenge myself to build a small browser-based game using React Fiber. Again, with help of ChatGPT, and I will walk you through the process. So if that sounds good, make sure to like, subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks a lot for watching and see you in the next one.